All right. Hello, everybody. I'm overwhelmed to see y'all and really excited for the next hour. It seems like there's a million awesome things to do every second of every day here. Overwhelming that y'all are here today. Especially excited for you to have a chance to interact with and collaborate with the Gender Cool team. I'll say off the start that my opportunity to work with them has quite literally changed my life. They have made me a better ally, the best version of myself, a better listener, a more aware person, and someone who is more likely to act. And that impacts me because it's my life, but it impacts everyone I come into contact with because they get the opportunity to interact with the best version of myself. So thank you, Gira and the champions, who I'll introduce later, the whole Gender Cool team. Really excited for today. Thank you all for coming. Going to give you a brief outline of what's going to happen. We got 60 minutes. The first 30 minutes, Gira and myself are going to talk a little bit about storytelling. We're going to watch some videos. We're going to do some polling. The second 30 minutes, the champions are going to come up, and we're going to have a great time. Yes, I'm going to get to that, yeah. My name's David Rockind. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the founder and creative director of Ground Media. Away we go. There will be some technical difficulties today. My name's David Rockind. I am a cisgender, straight white male whose career has been spent telling stories of people whose lived experiences are different than my own. First as a photojournalist, and now as the creative director of Ground Media, a creative agency. And if I'm honest, there's often been an unacceptable imbalance of power in the process, and a telling of stories that are often more provocative than powerful. The recognition of that imbalance and imperfect process led to the creation of a set of inclusive and collaborative storytelling principles meant to help everyone feel safe, comfortable, and powerfully in control of their own stories. As we worked with Gender Cool on a variety of storytelling projects that employed these principles, we saw that there was overlap between inclusion in the impact storytelling process and inclusion in the workplace. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we take collaborative storytelling principles and view them not only through the lens of a storyteller, but also through the lens of a listener, and apply them to building a more inclusive workplace? We're going to struggle with this all day, y'all. Okay, I hope this hour is a collaborative exploration more than a presentation. I'm here to help facilitate, I'm here to learn. We have an amazing opportunity to work together with the Gender Cool champions to come away with learnings that we're going to compile into a summary report that we can share with you all at the end of this. If you want to get that, you can scan the QR code, give us your email addresses, and we'll send it to you in a couple weeks. While we are talking about QR codes, we're going to try and do the polling thing. Technology has worked with us a little bit. Sometimes it hasn't worked with us. That other QR code will be back on at the end. If you want to participate in some of the polling on Menti, you can scan the QR code. You can go to menti.com. I'm going to read out loud the code that you type in. It's 34480101. All that information will be up whenever the polls come on. And the polls are open to run through whatever question you want, whenever you want right now. So hopefully that's fun. Gira Goldstein has been gracious enough to be here to help lead this workshop on impact storytelling. And actually, I'll just say, Gira, I've said this to you before, but in our first conversation, you left an imprint on my heart that will be with me for my entire life. And there are things that I've learned from you in the first 30 minutes of knowing you that will change the way I treat everyone and think about everything for the rest of my life. So thank you for that. We're going to go back one slide. Gira is a nationally recognized inclusion, diversity, belonging consultant and LGBTQ+ subject matter expert. Gira's work has reached millions of people around the world. She's been featured in influential national media, including The Today Show, The New York Times, Rolling Stone, ABC, NPR, all the other acronyms, and many other outlets. She's also a founder of the Gender Cool Project, a worldwide movement that showcases thriving transgender and non-binary youth. And she has been gracious enough to come up here and lead us off for this hour. Thank you, Gera.
Thank you, David. I don't really have a script, so I'm going to return those kind words. David, you've had an immense impact on Gender Cool and the mission, and that's why I'm standing here. Because in all of the years and all of the work that I've done, the moments that we spent with David and the champions that are going to come up will back me up on this, really impacted the way that we can share our story. There's no right way or wrong way to be a storyteller, but there might always be a better way to connect to your audience, a better way to move the needle forward in what we're trying to accomplish. I'm wearing my magician's cape today because we're going to try and do a little magic here in this room. We're talking about safe space, inclusion, what that looks like, what, more importantly, that feels like. What does it feel like? I've been to so many countless conferences and trainings where I've been with people in a room for 4 days and never knew their name. And we were working towards inclusion. I thought, this is ridiculous. So I'd like to use my magic cape and ask you all, for those of you that came in with a friend, don't say hello to the friend you came in with, but the person on the other chair that you haven't yet said hello to. Say hello. Just take one moment. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're all old friends. You can catch up later now. That's right. You see what I started? Feels good, doesn't it? You don't want to stop. See, that's a connection. That's a connection. That's what it feels like. And it's just that easy. From that introduction, you start talking about where you work. Then you start talking about your family. Or the weather, if you're not that skilled at speaking. Avoid the weather topic at all costs, please. I always test myself when I get into an Uber. Thank you, Uber, for being here. And in my head, I'm like, Gera, don't say weather. Don't say, yeah, I know it's like really cold in Chicago where I'm from, but that's always where I want to go. And instead I say, hi, I'm Gera. Nice to meet you. And I see where that conversation goes. But in this space here today that we're going to share with these champions who have, for many of them, shared most of their lives with people every day. You see, as trans people like myself, we come out every single day. And sometimes we come out more than once a day. So we are, in essence, by proxy, expert storytellers, just by waking up in the morning, saying hello to our pets. Hello, Astra, remember, I'm trans. You want to go outside? Yeah, right. So today, I couldn't be more honored and grateful to help explain what I thought was so fascinating, I've been doing this work for so many years with the champions, and we were making great content. We really were. And then we met David. And when I say the content elevated, I mean set the bar. Not just for our messaging, but for the messaging that I hope your companies can do. However, it starts with confidence in us being able to share our stories. And I found the intersections of the DEI work that we are all familiar with. If we zoom way out, what we're really leaning on, the core, the foundation of the work that we do, is around storytelling. My coworker told me a story about this, and they need this, and I want to support them, and here it is. Now that's storytelling. That's where that comes from. I heard from my coworker or my manager. When you start a sentence like that, you are actually sharing a story that was told to you. And then we're using those stories to make change happen. If you want that change to happen at a much faster rate, call David. And you will see what advocacy really looks like. David, you were kind enough to say that we changed your life, but you changed my life because I saw that in the work that David does, he needs to be an advocacy, but not just for trans and non-binary kids, but for kids who are struggling with hunger, with kids who are struggling with housing, with so many marginalized communities. And David has to become the ultimate advocate. And that only happens because he's the best listener I have ever met. So when you talk about where does advocacy start, where do we do this work, how do we become great storytellers? It starts by listening. And that's what I hope you're going to do today. But we also have opportunities for you to engage. We're going to try and get through this quick enough so that you can ask some questions. And just remember that feeling when you said hello to your neighbor in here. That's the energy that I hope we can carry through the rest of this hour, because that's what it's about. It's about setting up an environment where we all feel comfortable to share our stories. So with that, I'm going to hop off the stage. David's going to take us through some amazing content that he helped create, and then I'm going to come back up with the champions, and we're all going to have, all of us have a conversation. So thank you.
Thank God for Gera Goldstein. I think the slide switched. Can y'all switch the words for me up here? It's just me then. It's just, I'm someone that doesn't do well with speaking extemporaneously, so I'm waiting for the notes, and I appreciate y'all's patience. But here we go. Here we go. All right. We're back online. I appreciate the support. I believe that storytelling can change the world. I know that it takes an incredible act of courage to share your story with anyone, be it a coworker while sharing a cup of tea or with millions of people you don't know on a television screen, and to invite those people into the details of your life. Telling a story can be as intimate as it is powerful, and the champions who are going to be on this stage today know this well. They have no responsibility to have done so, but they have bravely spent a significant portion of their youth telling their stories and creating waves that have changed the world. What's more, those waves have created ripples that will continue to break for justice for years to come and will continue to change lives in ways that we may never fully see or understand. Before I go on, I want to recognize the three champions, Gia, Daniel, and Rebecca, who have made the brave decision to share their stories to help build a world that is just, fair, and filled with equality. Thank you. They're laughing like it's not true, but they know it's true. And the beat goes on. Okay. In recognition of the countless other heroes who have created an unstoppable path towards equality, including many who are in this room today, I'd like to show a brief video featuring some of the people that we've had the opportunity and honor of collaborating with over the years in helping to tell their stories, all of whom were part of the storytelling process that we'll discuss. So we're talking about storytelling, we're talking about workplace. Our first interactive poll, do you feel comfortable sharing your story at work? I'm not gonna leave it up for too long because we got a lot to get through, but whatever answers we get, if the tech actually works, we'll include in what we send y'all at the end. I believe that telling stories can change the world, but I also believe that if I want to be a part of that change, I think we are a few notes ahead. Y'all are real patient. I really appreciate it. Yes, I will go back to the code while we work out the, yes, here we go. So if you go to menti.com and use the code 38702214. If you can go back to the notes that you just had up. Thank you. As I mentioned, I've spent the past 20 years telling stories. My belief in the power of storytelling led me to journalism, where I spent a decade working as a documentary photographer with organizations like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Pulitzer Center. I believe that if people were aware of the grave injustices that exist in our world, then they'd be motivated to fight for change, that simple exposure could propel the fight for justice. I documented conflicts in Afghanistan and Mexico, political unrest in Haiti, health pandemics and natural disasters across the planet. But simply exposing the worst parts of humanity, just pointing to the death, disease, and destruction that exists, does not lead directly to building a better world. What's more, the stories that I've told for 20 years are primarily about people whose lived experiences are vastly different from my own. The practice of journalism and the way storytelling is often practiced in general isn't collaborative, it isn't inclusive, and the process, in all honesty, for me early in my career, often led to storytelling that had an inherent imbalance of power, that gave me control over stories that weren't my own, that I could never completely understand, and that I had no inherent right to being a part of. Essentially, I was in a position to make decisions that I couldn't responsibly make. The images that have been up on the screen were all images that I made, and at the time I made proudly for major media outlets. But looking back on them with a more reflective lens, I know that those stories weren't always told in a responsible way. And that storytelling can be many things. It can be powerful, it can be emotional, it can be dangerous, it can be predatory, and it can be humiliating. If we're going to commit to telling stories, we have to commit to making sure that the entire process is positive and powerful for everyone involved. I believe that if I want to be a part of the change, I have to adhere to the principle that my voice isn't the most important one in the process, and that my decision isn't final, and that I'm a guest in someone else's story. I left journalism to chart a different path. I founded Ground Media, a creative agency that works on storytelling campaigns for all kinds of organizations, from small nonprofits to Fortune 500 companies, all of whom are striving to make an impact. Everyone comes to us essentially with the same goal. We want people to care more about justice, vaccines, climate change, human rights, ESG, whatever it may be, We always tell folks, stories prove you are who you say you are, and that building up stories can prove that your top-down messaging is true. Even in this role, just like my career in journalism, I'm asked to make decisions about how other people's stories are told. But the truth is that no matter how good my heart is, no matter how hard I work, no matter how bad I want it, there will always be some things that I just don't understand that will inhibit me from making the best decision. My good intentions cannot wipe away a lifetime of divergent lived experiences. There will always be things that I cannot understand, and if I'm going to be a part of telling stories that are different from my own, I can't be the only one who makes the decisions. This is about respect, but at the end of the day, in all transparency, it's also about the bottom line. The best outcomes come from collaboration, and not just from an openness to other ideas, but an acceptance that they're required and a dedication to enact them. I'm going to show a few videos now that are part of campaigns we've been fortunate to have produced that I hope show the power of collaborative storytelling. The first one you've seen before. Are you all in the back able to help load that video?
If you passed me on the street,
Or in a restaurant.
or on a plane, would you think that I was kind?
Would you wonder if I was extraordinary?
Or if I might dream of changing the world? Because if I saw you on the street,
Or in a park?
I might wonder how you became the person that you are.
are you an author, an athlete, or studying to become a doctor?
Do you dream of moving mountains with your words? Or building bridges with your heart?
Have you ever performed in front of a crowd?
Introduce the President of the United States.
Or inspired people to be themselves and follow their dreams?
When you imagine the life that you want to build,
It's probably pretty close to the life.
That I want to build.
It's probably pretty close to the life that we all want to build. And even if I don't yet understand how you became you,
Or how brave you had to be.
Or how many times you had to take a deep breath.
and know that you were just one step away from showing the world how incredible you are.
I do know this. If I pass you on the street, and if we started talking,
I would listen.
I would learn.
And I would accept you for who you truly are.
even if the world isn't always the place we want it to be,
We are always the ones who can change it
we just have to listen.
Respect one another.
and decide.
That today is the day that
Everything changes.
So I came out to my mom on Valentine's Day of my junior year in high school.
I came out to my father at 16 years old.
When I was 14, I told my mom it was Christmas night.
My family and my community was totally like, the gays are an abomination and AIDS is like a sign of God's wrath. I had, two options, I would say, like leave my home, leave my family and the only life I'd ever known, or try to become straight.
I grew up in a Mormon, very devout family, and in our faith we were taught that our families were meant to be together for time and all eternity, and yet being gay meant that that wasn't something easily attained for me. It was that idea of being separated from my family and that sense of loneliness that just completely crushed me.
My family was most important to me. Coming from a Jewish home and coming from a very rigid structure of a family, that core value of not being disowned was so important.
So the week after I came out, my mom took me out of school early on a Wednesday to go meet with a pastor who would sort of help me become straight.
The therapist had recommended I would overcome same-sex attraction within 6 weeks.
And my parents encouraged me and pushed me to go to see a conversion therapist. And so that's when I started.
It's called gay conversion therapy, the practice of trying to cure a person of homosexuality through counseling.
There's really no scientific evidence it works, and plenty of reason to believe that it's actually harmful, particularly for minors.
Do you think homosexuality is a sin?
It's unnatural. I think that it's detrimental and ultimately destructive to so many of the foundations of civilization.
I was taught that being in a same-sex relationship was evil and sinful and a sort of rebellious lifestyle.
I was diagnosed with having too many female role models around me. And what that meant was I was not allowed to speak to my mother and sisters for 3 years.
They were making us like yell out like faggot and like we were supposed to make it like a real like bullying experience.
I contemplated suicide between 2 and 3 years.
I look at the first 20 years of my life as actually that was when I was in hell.
Hi, I wanted to share my story and let you know that it really does get better.
The way that you're wired to love is beautiful, and God delights in you exactly the way you are, and you don't have to change, and you don't have to suppress it. So I met my wife through Twitter, actually, which is crazy. I just feel so incredibly lucky. Like, I am one.
I would say it's conversion therapy is the reason that I became a psychiatrist. I knew that I wanted to create a world where all children had access to affirming care and that they could be supported.
I'm a person who went through conversion therapy and has taken it upon myself with others to end the practice. We know that 700,000 people have been through conversion therapy in the United States. One of the hardest things about ending conversion therapy is actually having a survivor share their story. And the awareness that we've been able to create has altered and changed the landscape of our country.
It has to be all in. It can't be something that's done halfway because otherwise it just won't happen.
I want the narrative instead to be, we love you, we delight in you, you are a joy, you are a gift to us.
We're all born perfect.
Yes, please, thank you.
Do you want to meet a family with a transgender kid? Here we are. Max loves to do backflips. Max loves to play his ukulele. Max loves to just be a kid and just be himself. When I found out I was pregnant, all I really wanted was a happy, healthy, whole child. And that's what I got. If you've never met a transgender child before, what I want you to know is that that child is no different than yours. They have the same hopes and dreams and deserve the same equality as your child does. We tell our kids as often as we can that we love them in as many ways as possible. There are some politicians who are trying to tear my family apart simply because my son is transgender. Trans kids don't have a political agenda. They are just kids. They just want to be left alone. My family's just like yours. We love our kids unconditionally, and we will never stop fighting for them. Stand with us. Protect our families.
I should also say, y'all have an impossible job, and you're doing an amazing job today, yesterday, tomorrow, so thank you guys for all that as well. Thank you. I'm actually going to zoom through this so we can try and get on with it. Here are the 5 principles we try to work through whenever we help on a story, and these are what we're going to discuss real soon with Gira and the Champions. As I present these at the start of any campaign or any production, I say that these things are true, whether I say them or not, but it's important that you know that I know that they're true, and that we say them out loud and frequently. Number 1, create space. I hope this is a safe space where we can be honest and vulnerable. My lived experience is different from your lived experience, so no matter how hard I try, there will always be some things that I don't understand. I'll work very hard to overcome that challenge. Number 2, build trust. You know more about your story than I do. I respect you, I trust you, and I know that your participation in this process is necessary for us to be successful. Number 3, speak your power. You have the power. This is your story, and you are always in control of it. If at any time you aren't comfortable with anything, you can feel comfortable stopping the process. We'll work together to make it right. Number 4, give emotion. I will always be emotionally present. I won't simply actively listen to you, but I will actively engage my heart. And number 5, collaborate. I do have a point of view on how to tell your story for our shared purpose-driven goals, and I'll communicate that to you. There's an audience in mind and a reason for asking them to experience your story. But if you don't agree with my perspective, refer to rule number 3, which is this is your story, your power, and you're in control. So what does any of this have to do with building an inclusive workforce? I believe that friction makes fire, that a variety of voices are required to break down all ideas and build them back up into the strongest, most powerful spark that can light that fire. And I believe that collaboration cannot take the shape of a pyramid with a single voice at the top. Inclusion must exist in the decisions we make to bridge the inherent gaps between our inabilities and our good intentions. We've got to give up control. We tell stories for impact because we believe bringing people together sparks emotion, that emotion ignites action, and that action leads to change. But when the person whose story we would tell is sitting straight across from you at the office, we don't need to turn it into a video. You have the power over your own story, and you can make your own decisions about if, when, and how your story is told. That's true if you're telling your story on screen, and that's true if telling your story becomes a bold, brave, daily action lived out on your commute, in the break room, or on the company retreat. I'd like to introduce you to the Gender Cool Champions, who will help us work through how these principles apply to the workplace. And I want to stress that these champions may represent the next-gen workforce and can speak about what that workforce will demand, but they also represent the next-gen workforce leaders and can speak about how they're going to build, grow, and lead the companies of the future. Rebecca shares her experience in a way that touches hearts, changes minds, and inspires positive change. She's received awards for her activism from NYC Pride and Jersey City Pride. Her work has been featured by media outlets around the world, including People, Teen Vogue, and Good Morning America. By being a proud advocate, she inspires people of all ages and identities to show up fully as themselves and to dare to make the world a better place. Come on up. Thank you. Wherever you like.
Cool. Hi, everyone.
Gia is a 19-year-old national LGBTQ+ advocate, model, and actress. She uses her platform to advance the rights of all communities. Since first sharing her story, Gia has been featured on ABC News, Today, The New York Times, People, and others. She's a founding member of the Gender Cool Project and sits on their board of directors. Welcome, Gia.
Like, where do I sit? Here.
Daniel, at the age of 9, Daniel was featured in the PBS Frontline documentary, Growing Up Trans, and he's continued to share his messages of acceptance and understanding with major companies who prioritize inclusivity within their workforce. Being a Gender Cool champion, sharing his experiences, and facing his stage fright has been one of the greatest highlights of his young life. Daniel aims to embody his favorite quote, thank you, Daniel, it's now my favorite quote as well, by Oscar Wilde, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." Daniel is also a founding member of Gender Cool. Welcome, Daniel. And Gara.
Okay, this is the best part.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Just so that you all know, in full levels of transparency, we have a giant red countdown timer right here. We have 24 minutes and 15 seconds, 14, 30, 12. Hurry up, go, go, go.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to pass it back. It's so great to see the champions up here together. You are all fast friends as we are. And as I told them before we came in here today, I hope that they can pretend that none of us are here, because when you see them just being kids, and I don't use that term in any other way, kids. Not when I'm speaking about their advocacy, not when I'm speaking about their power, but only when I'm speaking about their ability to just be who they are. Okay? So thank you. Go ahead, David.
Thank you guys so much for being here. We've talked about these, we've worked on these things, we've all worked together before. We'll start with the first principle, creating space. What does creating space in the workplace mean to y'all? Whether that's physical, an atmosphere, a community, what does creating space mean?
I mean, I guess I can start with this question. Like personally, I've only had like a couple jobs. I haven't been in like the official like workplace yet, but I think like creating spaces in so many different aspects, whether like that's through school, and like we've all been in school for so long, so I think that's like where we found like where we need spaces. And I came out when I was in 8th grade, and it was really important for me to have space. So I remember my guidance counselors, they actually had a pizza party for me, and I think it was like 15 of my friends. We like they came to school, and like we just like they sat down and they're like, we're like here for you and everything like that. And that was really sweet. It was like that space I had and those friends I could go to if anything did go wrong. And then it's also, I think, through like clubs too, like GSA, or even we had this club called Peace Project at my school, and that was a really like LGBTQ friendly space. So I think it's finding those spaces through clubs or through community, whether that's your friends and family, stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And Rebecca, you talked a little bit about providing resources for people to learn and creating a space for learning.
Yeah, so like I think for me, I was going to talk a little bit about GSA, but like it's just a space where everyone can be like together, and I think having that space in your school is really important. But I think in workforce it's even more important, because people want to be there, and it's going to promote like healthy work habits and like all of that. But like I think the first step that like you have to do to create this is to provide resources. It's to provide things where people can learn, because the first step to any like acceptance is learning how about other people and listening to their stories. And I think when you like receive that information, that's how you're gonna create the space so that you can be around other people and just like accept them for who they are without any other like barriers.
Awesome. Daniel?
I wanted to add a little bit about the clubs. I'm a part of the drama club, and something I really try to do is make sure that everybody feels very included and accepted while there. And that's just another example of a space, turning a space into a very welcoming environment where people are really able to thrive and feel like they're accepted and be really influential members of that club. And so I also want to talk about a little bit about bathrooms and having those places where people can go that's safe for them. At my school, we have 2 gender-neutral bathrooms, which is great, but it's a very big school, and they're on absolute opposite sides of the school. And so it makes it really difficult sometimes if you're in the middle and you have maybe a very short amount of time to go to the bathroom to be able to get there. So having more of those places where people can feel comfortable to even just go to the bathroom, which is a basic right of everybody. So really just creating those places where people can feel completely comfortable to do exactly what they need.
And I even like wanted to add, so with Gender Cool, there's these things we do called reverse mentorships. And essentially like we work with companies to learn about inclusion and diversity, and then also like kind of like teach inclusion and diversity to them. And something I noticed through the companies that I worked with is they had these really inclusive spaces, whether it's like pods or BRGs. And I think that's a really good idea in like the workplace, just to have like those communities to go to. And it really like allows people to come together. So that was something I was really impressed by. So I think if like the company you like work at doesn't have that already, creating those communities can be really important and vital, especially for like minority employees.
Yeah, because if anything, a space is more about the people than like the physical space. It's about like who's in the space with you.
I'd like to add, and I know my own kids would be like, think it's important to recognize that when you see thriving young people, that for many of our champions starts in the home. That's where that safe space is so critical to create a thriving environment for your child. So as I said, I want to involve all of you. And so if you feel comfortable, if you are the parent of a transgender or non-binary person, please stand up. And I can tell by that applause that every single person in this room wants to support those parents. So I'm going to ask you, the rest of the audience, if you would like to support parents of transgender and non-binary young people, please stand up and give yourselves a round of applause. Doesn't that feel good? So imagine how good it would feel if you were the parent of a transgender, non-binary young person at home, and you knew that all your employees, coworkers, had your back. They may not understand what your family is going through, because everyone's on a different journey, but they got you. You need to take some time, go for it. You have questions, go for it. Right? That's what we're talking about. How do we share those stories? How do you tell your coworker, hey, guess what happened in my house last night? Something incredibly beautiful. And I want to share that with you. Well, what you do as a coworker after they disclose that amazing experience defines you as a person. Right? It doesn't define the person who came out to you, it defines you as a person. And I will add one final thing, that in this room, what we all share, and even sharing stories with you all, at a very young age, these champions knew that they were going to tell their parents something. But they also knew at a very young age that they did not want to upset their parents. It's a really hard spot to be in, and so many of us in this community share that experience. That's why I always say that trans and non-binary kids, all LGBTQ, plus young people, and old people, thank you, have withheld sometimes much longer than we should because we care so much about the other people in our lives, right? We are trying to protect them. And we only hope that on disclosure, we receive that same kindness in return. And that's what these champions are here to show us. This is what it looks like for all of us that have fought and told stories to make change happen. This is the change that happened, right? We should all be so proud. Okay, David, go ahead, sorry.
It's a great segue.
15 minutes,
I
10
know.
seconds.
We're going to limit build trust to whoever speaks up first so we can get through the rest. But what does it take for y'all to feel like trust exists in a workplace or in a community, or that your leaders have your trust?
I think knowing things will be like confidential in a way. I mean, probably like your human resource like person or like group or whatever is like a good place to go. But it's just knowing that like you have that space and like you know that you'll feel comfortable there. I mean, we can probably all relate to like when we like came out to our parents, like that was probably like the first person we could really trust. And just knowing that, I mean, like I assume my parents would be supportive, and they were, just because like they've always like made it known that they're really like they're LGBTQ allies and everything. And I think whether that's through like your human resource group or just making it known in the workplace, that's so important because that allowed me the comfort to come out to my parents. And I think like that was like the first step in my whole entire journey. So I'm really glad I was able to do that and like have like their confidentiality and knowing like they wouldn't say anything to like anyone or like my friends or anything like that.
Awesome. I'll break what I said, but Rebecca or Daniel, do you have anything?
I don't know, Gia really said what I was gonna say. It's just like, you know, being with people that you know will love and support you no matter what. Like that's when you know they can trust you. That's how, like that's why we're all comfortable around our families, and that's why it's amazing that our families have, you know, supported us, accepted us, all of the above. But I think, I don't know, just being with people you love.
Awesome. Speak your power. And Daniel, I was really taken with the story you told about your experience leading drama and how important it is to you to lead in a way that gives people permission and power to speak. And I'd love just to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been in drama club all my 4 years of high school. I'm the president this year, which I'm very excited about and I love so much. But one of my main goals as being president was really to make sure that everybody felt like their voice truly mattered in the club and that they were being heard. There's always a lot of issues in our club with having a lot of divides between techies and actors or older people versus younger people. So I've really worked to make sure that is come down a lot. And a lot of what I really try to do is to make sure they know that I am here for them. I try to make sure they know that, one, I'm gay, and one, I'm trans, so I'm a safe person for them to go to. And also just creating, once again, those safe spaces where we can talk, where we have meetings with each other to make sure that they feel completely comfortable. And just really giving them their voice and making sure that they know that they can be heard and they can be completely accepted.
And I feel like, I don't know, everyone has power, and I think that's like what I would want emphasized in like any sort of community, but especially the workplace, is that like even though I might not be in a high position or I might not know many people, I still have the power to like share my story, and it's not any less because of that. Like all stories matters, and all stories are important to hear because they are your lived experience, and they all hold like, you know, some sort of weight to them.
Yeah, and I think like in a corporate setting, I mean, there's so many huge companies with hundreds, thousands of employees, and speaking your power may be hard when you're doing it individually. So I think that community sense, as I was talking about earlier, I found a lot of support through my community, and I think that allowed me to like thrive so much when I did come out as trans and everything. And I think that in the workplace, having those communities and being able to speak up in numbers is so important. I mean, take Black Lives Matter, for example. I think the reason that it became as big as it did is because so many people spoke on it. And I think that like becoming in your power is like really finding those people where you can connect with and really speak together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Gia. Amplifying your power. You know, we don't have to look at advocacy or storytelling as an individual event. It can be a group exercise. You know, if I were to come to you and say, hey, you know, I think this. It might be a lot more powerful if I came to you and I said, hey, you know what? We think this. And that's a way where you can make change happen quicker, right? To find allyship. So thanks, Gia. That is a great point.
Yeah, and even with Gender Cool, like, I mean, there's like power in numbers. Like, maybe one champion wouldn't have the same influence as 22 champions. And I think that showing 22 positive, successful, like amazing stories really shows the power of like what support does. So it is like that power in numbers. Mm-hmm.
I bet each of you has the power of 22 champions. Give emotion. What does it mean for you all to have emotion in the workplace and to have responses in the workplace?
I can start. I work as a camp counselor over the summer, and it's with younger kids around 9, 10, 11. And so big part of my job is making sure they know that like I'm here for them and that I give a lot of emotions. I'm always on with them. I'm always agreeing with what they say. I'm always working off of them. So really trying to show that I'm actively listening to them through my emotions. And if they're having a difficult time, make sure they know that I'm here for them and show my emotions to help them stay on track and get back on track. And so this is really big in all workplaces, having the ability to show emotions to everybody. So it's really important because you know that somebody else is there for you. That's how we communicate with each other, by showing emotions. I'm going to build connections with people if they're giving emotions back to me, and I'm giving it to them. So this all interlocks with everything we've already talked about, creating those safe places. Every other slide, really making connections with people because you're giving emotion to each other.
Yeah, I took a class in 7th grade, and it was about like the design process and all that. But like a really interesting part of that was empathy and learning how to be empathetical with like the people you're working with. And I think that's what give emotion means to me. And like it's how you take these vulnerable situations where people are sharing like vulnerable parts of their identity, or they are giving emotion to you, and you take that and then you empathize with it and you share it back to them and you talk to them, and it's how you're going to make these long-lasting connections that like they're making your workplace more inclusive. It's making it a better space for you to be. Like it all interconnects.
Yeah, I would like add to those 2 points. I think that I don't really have anything else to say. I would just say like emotion is so important in the workplace, and like having the freedom to do that is really important.
One of the things that y'all mentioned in one of our prior conversations was that giving emotion and showing up is seen in action, and that it's great to have a process to talk about things and to give feedback, but that you all demand action and to see that that has been heard and that people are showing up.
I think it's also a top-down effort for those of you that are at the higher levels of your companies. When you see a CEO cry, you see it as vulnerability. But when you see a new hire cry, you see it as weakness. And it's the same emotion, right? So we need to put less filters in our spaces. And I think that, Gia, you had mentioned George Floyd. I think that was a moment in our country where, for the first time, we started to see people open up in the workplace about their true emotions. Right, in a way that we couldn't before that moment, before that tragedy, where we all shared in that space together. And so, good point.
And like even with the next generation, like Gen Z, I think that like our emotions and like we're so much like more open with that, and I think like mental health especially is much more talked about. So it's really important that there are those like spaces in the workplace. And it's like you're not seen as that just like that new hire who's like weak or whatever, but it's like you have those times where you can express your emotion, just because I think for Gen Z, like we are like more open about our feelings and everything.
It's so exciting. I mean, don't we just love hearing them talk like that? So much of that work is done, and I think it's one of the gifts that I get to experience. And Jen, my co-founder, where are you, Jen? She's in here somewhere.
Back there.
There she is. And we talk about this often, is that even in these really difficult times, and we have people calling us and emailing us, and what are you going to do? Oh my gosh, and the world is on fire. And it kind of feels that way sometimes. Right up to the point where I hear any one of them start to speak about their life experiences and where they're going to take this world. Because whether or not we like it, we're not living forever. And what comes after them, hopefully, is even more inclusive. So as the clock ticks, 4 minutes left, right, we can all think maybe there's just 4 minutes left of the fire that's out there against this community. Because the time's going to come where this is what leadership looks like, right? And
In the spirit of collaboration, we will open it up to 4 minutes and 21 seconds of questions. And I think that we are starting with a question from those of y'all who are watching online. Is that right?
I've got a mic. Who has a question?
It's not so much as a question, but the common denominator that you have here. Each one of you talked about the support and the space that you had. And I just want to make a comment that, that's how important it is, that foundation that enabled you to be and accomplish what you have in your young lives that some of us may not accomplish in our lifetime, goes to your parents who were there supporting you and loving you unconditionally, that enabled you to thrive. So as much as we're applauding you here, I think we should applaud, I don't know if your parents are here or not, should have applauded them.
Do y'all want to come up here for a minute, the parents?
Thank you. What a beautiful thing to say. And as I know these parents here, I hope the rest of the people in this room understand deeply that they're not only the parents to these champions, but the parents to so many in this country who look to them for that kindness, that support, and even that simple but so important hug, because so many young people don't have this type of support. And if you ask any of our champions, most of them will tell you the reason they do the work they do is because they understand the privilege they have through the support of their families. So thank you for that comment. Yes. 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Okay, so,
sorry. Yeah, I see a question over here. Oh.
I'm pretty loud, so I think I can do it without the mic. But I'm a mom, and I have a glorious, kind, loving 8-year-old daughter. And I go to my peers for parental advice. I've never had an opportunity to talk to such amazing young people. I want to ask you, what can I do for my daughter to make sure that she knows that whatever she has to tell me, whatever support she needs, I'm here for her?
I feel like let her guide her own path in a way. I don't know, like my parents, they really let me like explore so many different things. And like for me, like whether that was like through like buying Barbies, stuff like that, like they never had an issue with it. Like they just let me like get them, and like, I mean, like they would get them for me. I was 8 years old too. But like, I mean, stuff like that. They just like let me guide my own path. And I think having that freedom to explore, and like my parents like were part of the Unitarian Church, and like something that's like really big there is like having that idea of like being open to anything. And I think it's the idea of just like letting her have freedom, guide her own path.
And have conversations. Don't like shy away from tough conversations that you may be scared to have, because they're important and they're what shapes like your kids' identity, and it gives them a space to share their opinion, even though it can be scary to share their opinion in a world that often doesn't want it.
So we are at time. Thank you all so much for your questions. I would like to add one last thing on your question and to follow up. For everybody in this room, when someone comes out to you, it means you have already, up to that point, done everything right.
Yep.
Right? So for you parents that have the child that comes to you, and discloses to you, you have already done so much of the heavy work, right? You have created that environment. So with that, thank you all. David, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.